All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise of Justice Movement, the podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the host and the founder of the Rise of Justice Movement and the Rise of Justice Movement, the podcast. All right. So I don't think people are ready for this conversation, and I am because I know exactly how it's going to go. This has been a long time coming, and this is a total fangirl moment for me because this candidate, but more than just a candidate, just a badass human being that's doing some incredible organizing with this campaign. And in Indiana, Indiana is left out of the conversation because it's not seen as viable. But this district in Indiana, District 5, is very purple. The current incumbent, Victoria Spartz, is not meeting the moment, and we're about to find out why. Jackson Franklin, welcome to the podcast, my friend. Oh, this is good.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh God, this is gonna be good. I'm so excited. I'm shaking. Like the energy that you bring to this campaign is exactly how every candidate should be on both sides of the aisle. But we know that's not going to happen. We know that they feel like they have it in the bag. They're not getting out and meeting voters, even like opposition, right? Like the opposition, you gotta talk to them. Just talk to them. You never know. But you just turned 26 in March, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You're bringing the big Pisces energy. And it's so good to see. You want to know why I know it's a Pisces and how I know it's Pisces energy? Because my mom is a Pisces, my partner is a Pisces, and I'm a Leo. You can imagine the conversations. You can imagine. I don't get too much into like astrological things, but I know enough that Pisces are born leaders. They speak their minds, and you are no stranger to that.
I appreciate it.
So I would love to know, what your story is, what your background is. I know you're a combat medic, paramedic. I admire that profession. I was training to be an EMT. I fell off the back of an ambulance and fractured my ankle during my internship, and I said, I'm done. So
Yeah.
then I went into nonprofit, which obviously, you sit around in an office and you manage volunteers, and it's a lot more simpler. But I've always had a admiration for people that put their lives on the line. And first of all, thank you for your service.
You're worth
Secondly,
it.
my grandfather was an Air Force veteran, so this is something that's very near and dear to me. So we'll talk about veterans, and we'll get into that. But first things first, what's your story and what led you to run?
Well, I also want to say that it wasn't just my birthday on March. I'm a
Yes.
triplet. So every March 10th is like a big family holiday. It's like the Super Bowl and we all just hang out and it's a
Yes.
fun time. So and we're all Jays, Jared, Jackson, Julian, and all credit goes to my amazing mother, who's the strongest woman I've ever met in the world, raising triplets. So no easy thing with two other children, by the way. But yes, I'm Jackson Franklin. I'm running for Congress in Indiana's 5th congressional district. May 5th is the primary, so as of this recording, it's 12 days away. I can't believe we're here because we've been running this campaign for a year and a half now. The election, our campaign didn't start when it was politically normal, like, oh, January of the election years, typically when the establishment candidates hop in. Maybe we should do it late 2025 or early 2025. No, this campaign started right after we got our clocks cleaned last election. Indiana got swept up by Trump. Victoria Spartz overperformed in this district. And the reason why I decided to run, well, it's not just any one thing. There's a lot of things that build up to doing something crazy like running for Congress. But largely, it was a lack of leadership by the candidates and the Democratic Party on whole, because I feel like most working class people don't feel like they have a party. The working class does not have a party that is like unapologetically fighting for them. And that's why I decided to throw my hat in the ring pretty early on and give a voice to working people and fight for the working class, not just the donor class. So we have two corporate right wing parties that do not represent the interest of us working class people. And I am very inspired by the likes of Bernie Sanders, like Zoran Mamdani, AOC, feeling the burn ever since 2016, when guess what? Bernie Sanders won this state of Indiana. Not only did he win this state, he won all 6 counties of this fifth district. So we're bringing back, where this campaign is the direct continuation of the political revolution set off by Bernie Sanders. There's been a huge vacuum for this space in Indiana. And I might remind people that 2016 was the last presidential primary that Indiana had 10 years ago. We have not had any voice or any choice since 2016 because it was over by the time I got to Indiana in 2020. And in 2024, oh my gosh, we didn't even have a primary. So this campaign, and we can get into like some of the other experiences that I've had leading up to me running, because there's a lot. I'm a combat medic in the Indiana Army National Guard, deployed overseas. I've seen the results of genocide firsthand in Kosovo, being on the ambulance and having taken veterans, people I looked up to, my heroes, from the hospital back to their homes to die because they didn't have any health insurance and they didn't want to put their families through medical bankruptcy. I mean, you talk about an experience that radicalizes you against the system. It's that. It's, watching your heroes die right in front of you. So for all these reasons, that's why, people, my friends around me, my family, people in the space were asking me to run, and basically it's just a service. Like, it just had to be done. It was kind of like little question, like, yeah, of course. I started running when I was 24 years old, and I could see that the system was failing. No one believes the political system is truly working for them unless you're a billionaire. So we have to step up.
Money in politics influences a lot of things. We see the APAC influence. We see big money. We see pharmaceuticals. We see all of these things influence these decisions, and a lot of the times, these elected officials, and it goes from Congress down, they don't even know oftentimes what is in the bills that they are introducing or even passing because they don't read them. And I didn't believe that, and I mentioned it a couple times on this podcast specifically. I didn't believe that. I was like, oh, they always write their own things. Uh-uh. Whenever you go in and talk to them and you ask them questions like, why did you support this? Oh, I didn't read it. Who are you representing? Because you're not representing the people. You're representing this corporation, or you're representing APAC, you're representing this, you're representing that. Let's dive into affordability. Trickle down economics is a system that clearly does not work. It's very, very obvious. And what do you feel is currently working, if literally anything? Because we've had some key moments, or what is not working in regards to affordability in your district and
So,
nationally?
yeah, I'm a big fan, you might imagine, with having a Medicare for All book right over my shoulder of the Medicare system. Now, of course, I believe it
Yes.
needs to be expanded to a Medicare for All system, but our seniors, I mean, anyone who's on it, like, relatives or family member, like, people that are on it, they praise it. Now, we should also include dental, vision, and hearing, but once people are in that age of 65 and up to be included in that, they absolutely love being able to get healthcare. A lot of times, people don't even have healthcare until they get 25 and 65, and then they can finally be like, "Oh, now I can get my back checked out because I hit age and I can get." And that's the largest demographic group. Like, the most expensive healthcare demographic group is covered. So, having expanding it to a Medicare for all style system, hey, the most we're already paying for the most expensive. Like, young people might get checked up here and there for whatever. But as well as Social Security. I'm a big fan of Social Security. FDR is up there, and he's not perfect by any means, but he did a lot of good things, such as the New Deal. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that I appreciate about our system, but I would say there's a glaring failure on this system. Like, they're gutting Medicaid. Victoria Sparks, the person I'm running to replace, voted for the One Big Beautiful Bill, which cut 18 million people off their Medicaid. 18. Now, if you ask me, that's political violence against the working class. You could either solve it at the ballot box or you get a different kind of box, maybe the bullet box. Because when you kill those people in a system that 120,000 Americans, per the studies, die every year due to lack of health care, health insurance, what do you expect to happen? Like you are murdering the people you're trying to represent, allegedly. So you talked about money in politics. We talk about the influence that this large corporate money has on our politicians. Well, it just so happens you look at all the people that voted for this bill. By and large, they are influenced by the big health insurance lobby. And I don't have to just look at Republicans. Look at Democrats too. According to the polls, there's a poll by The Hill. 70% of Americans want a Medicare for all system. Worded exactly like that. Do you want a Medicare for all style system? 70% say yes. That's Republicans, Democrats, independents alike. But why is it? If 70% of the nation wants something, how is DC not doing this? How is our state legislators not getting involved? But that's because there's a huge uh, discrepancy between what we working people want and what our politicians do once in power. And it all goes back down to money in politics. So, of course, the glaring big notice that like we must overturn Citizens United, which equated money to a campaign as freedom of speech. And of course, if money equals freedom of speech, whoever's the wealthiest has the loudest voice in our democracy. And that's no democracy. Say it with me. That's oligarchy, right? As Bernie Sanders will always say. So these are just some of the things that immediately come to mind in our current political system.
Oh, yes, 100%. Exactly. And it's a policy choice. It literally is a policy choice, and it's a systemic failure. Speaking of which, gun violence prevention, which Indiana is no stranger whenever it comes to violence, whenever it comes to gun violence. What does gun violence look like in your district? And, what do you propose as far as addressing this for exactly what it is? It goes beyond an epidemic, it's a public health crisis.
Yes.
You know, Look what happened in Louisiana the last 2 weeks. Louisiana has been riddled by gun violence. Uh, 8 children shot and killed in a domestic violence situation. And then at a mall yesterday, like it's everywhere. And society has become desensitized whenever it comes to that. I live in Kansas City, and every 4th of July, as bad as this is to say, we look at each other and we're like, is that a firework or is that a gunshot? Because we don't know which one it actually is. And it's a very real issue. As a survivor myself, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are and how you would address this in recognizing it as a public health crisis. Because it's beyond an epidemic. It's beyond that. It's global. We see that.
Definitely. So yeah, this clip hits pretty close to home. Just a few days ago, Westfield, which is in Hamilton County in the district, went on to an Alice lockdown. There was like a school shooter threat. I was in high school during Parkland, and I helped lead the walkout in protest at my rural school in the middle of nowhere. So we had about like 20 students show up, but that was big for this little county school. And so, I mean, my entire public education experience has been that of school shooter drills and always wondering what's on the top of like, oh, there's always going to be the chance that a active shooter barges through my classroom. And you're thinking this as a kid and murders my friends and I and my teacher. That's not how children should be growing up. That's a uniquely American experience. Gun violence is the number one killer of our children. It's not car crashes, it's not accidental overdose, it's gun violence. So the fact that, and yes, we can relate this back to money in politics as well, that the NRA lobbies a significant portion of our legislators, both at the state level and at the federal level, it severely impacts our ability to legislate gun reform. And as a congressperson, I will fight to have universal background checks. This is just common sense. 97% of the public wants this. Even obviously 97 is a big number. Most Republicans are like, yeah, okay. And I also agree that we should have red flag laws. If you say you're going to shoot up a school, maybe you should allow them to buy an AR-15, right? High capacity magazines. I don't think you need to be walking around with 60 plus rounds in your mag. That's not for me. Like, and the thing is, I've deployed overseas. I have guns of my own, but I'm a safe gun owner. Like, I have the training. They're safely kept. Locks and everything. And I'll be honest. I like shooting firearms for sport. It's just fun to me. I like looking at a range and shooting. But we have to have common sense gun reform. And how many of our children have to die for these people? They're never. It's never going to be enough. We could there could be a school shooting in the next like couple months that would kill like the biggest school shooting in American history. And I don't think that the current people in power would bat an eye. They'd be like thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. But yeah, what can we do about it other than, do what every other developed nation on the planet has already done? It's no coincidence that America has the highest amount of firearms per person and has the highest amount of gun deaths. Those two are correlated. We have to regulate it, and we have to, in the Second Amendment, it literally says a well regulated militia. The word regulated is right there. So, as well as many other things, I'm definitely in favor of, regulating firearms, common sense gun reform, and to save the lives of our children.
How can we be a pro-life nation or, quote unquote pro-life nation when children go to school and they have to use their books to dodge bullets? The answer to that is not clear backpacks. The answer to that is this is a policy failure and a systemic failure. And I grew up in public schools as well. And I know how traumatic it can be to go through the drills. Unfortunately, I in middle school we were on lockdown for a shooting at one of the neighbors because like I said, I grew up in like the Kansas City area. So it's like very heavily populated and it's very populated, right? And now there's like an overpopulation, but they've had to build more schools. But we were on lockdown in my middle school. There was a shooting that was at one of the houses that was really close, and he actually ran literally directly through like our school's like grass and was still like shooting, and we were hiding under a desk. I know what that felt like. Fast forward to high school, literally like 2 years later, there we had a massive fight right outside of my high school, and it ended in gunfire. And I was not able to get a hold of my mom because the teacher at that time, they took our phones at the beginning of class and we got them back at the end of it. So, solving this issue is not taking away cell phones from children either. I understand that they're a distraction. I get that. I understand that. But I speak from a perspective of I wasn't able to get a hold of my parent. That school and those teachers are not going to contact every single one of our parents. We have to have some form of communication, even if it's just like, hey, mom, this is going on. I've had several friends that have children, and a very real thing every single time that they wake up and go to school is, are they going to come back? Are they going to come back alive, or am I going to have to go verify who my child is? Claim their body. Like this is not who we are. This is not America. This is not the American dream. We do not have to live in constant fear of violence. Walking outside, it can happen anywhere, rural or not rural. It can happen literally anywhere. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of pro life, let's let's talk about like universal childcare. So this is a cost burden to working class families and the poor and the working class. This is a very heavy cost burden. Some people go further into poverty because they can't afford the childcare. They have to leave their jobs. If you leave your job, your bills don't get paid. Your bills don't get paid. You wind up, being criminalized for being unhoused. So how do we address this like universal childcare? How do we address this? Look what Zohar Mamdani is doing. in New York City. I'm a big supporter of what he's doing. And, shameless plug, Miss Rachel follows us. But Miss Rachel is one of my biggest inspirations. I grew up watching Mr. Rogers, right? Miss Rachel is this generation's Mr. Rogers and carrying on his legacy of fighting like hell for children. She has amplified Rahaf, from Gaza. That story like literally shattered my entire heart. That's the first time I learned about Miss Rachel. Everybody else knew her from YouTube. I knew her because of her advocacy, because of what she's doing for the Gazan families in Congo and Sudan. And she's just, God, I get emotional every time. And I freaked out whenever she followed us. I literally about threw my phone. But that's a whole different conversation. It's not about who follows us, but what matters is she sees what we are doing, and we're going to continue amplifying what she's doing too. Um, but she's a big supporter of universal childcare. I mean, she has children of her own, but she believes in protecting children. That's the true pro-life aspect. That's the true version of it. But what's your thoughts? How do you feel about universal childcare and expanding it and expanding that public option?
100%. Yes. And in fact, I was invited by a daycare in Muncie, and Indiana, we used to have childcare vouchers for,
Mm.
it was a $220 million program. People under a certain income level could pull upon that voucher system. So they didn't have to make the choice of, going to work and leaving their child at home so they could put food on the table and lights and heating, but abandoning their child, or sit with your child, take care of your child in a freezing apartment that you can't pay for anything. You can't pay enough to put food on the table for your child. Governor Braun, Mike Braun, who, by the way, just a little quick tour here, he ranked last place in popularity of all governors in the whole country, ranked 50th in popularity. Just a little gauge. He is a Trump puppet. He's like a less charismatic wannabe Trump. He's like a robot. Well, anyway, back to childcare. This daycare center invited me in Muncie, invited me, and I'm not gonna share their story because it was personal, but they gave me a tour of the facility. I talked to the workers. They said they had to let go since this voucher got cut, then their funding got massively cut, of course. They had to let go of a lot of professionals. They would rather cut staff and that few staff work longer and harder than ever cut the needs and the care that they are giving these children. My proposal, now I'm running for a federal office, not state, but something I was talking amongst with them is that if you legalized cannabis in the state of Indiana, you would raise more than anywhere between 240 and 260 million dollars every year, enough to completely bring back that program and expand that program, which would be a significant step. So the fact that we're not doing these things, these common sense measures that would immediately raise money. Also, I might say there's billionaires out there. There's two billionaires, notably in Indiana. What is $220 million to a billionaire? Someone who has like $14 billion, one of them. You know how much money they would have? Basic if like $220 million, $14 billion minus 220 million. Guess how much that is? It's about $14 billion. Oh, wow. They couldn't even notice. So if we made the rich pay their fair share in taxes, there wouldn't be children wandering the street, which they also told me about. Just a small walk away from my house. The daycare workers were saying that a family that was cut off this program, the mother had to go work. She was working two, three jobs to be able to put food on the table for her child. And it was like a 5-year-old little girl, and they were at the girl was left at home alone because the moms, they didn't have a good, a supportive structure, couldn't take care of the child, so that they left the child at home, said stay put. It's a 5-year-old, walks out in the freezing. It was this last winter, it wasn't that long ago, and this child gets the public transit system noticed her, the bus, and they were like, "Hey, where are you from?" They were like, "Oh, this is going to daycare." She tried walking. She had no idea where she was going. So they dropped off. And all of this could have been prevented if we just funded these programs. So, yes, we need to have, on a national level, universal daycare, universal childcare, making sure that the children get the care they need. And it's not just people think of like daycare as like, babysitting. It's not. It's a fundamental building block of education. So often people get to kindergarten or first grade and they literally don't even know how to play with toys. Children who don't know how to, like, they don't know how to put these things together. Daycare tackles this and they could actually understand relating to other people, many other like social norms, and like putting one to one together with, as far as things. Not everyone has the time, and not everyone's got the perfect handbook of being the perfect parent, right? So society needs to step up and we need to take care of those, the least amongst us, right? We need to make sure that people are getting each other's back. That's what a community is for. So yes, absolutely, we need a universal program to take care of our children.
Your incumbent acts like she cares about children unless they're disabled or they're LGBTQ or any other aspect, right? And she's been notorious in attacking trans rights. She's been notorious in attacking disabled students. And this is, I think it was like 2024. Her and Representative Glenn Ivey had a very heated argument. I don't know if you remember this, but this was very interesting to kind of like sit back and watch because they debated the protection of women, or, allegedly it's protected, women. And there was like this whole like fiery dispute and it went back and forth. And I watched the video. It's actually on Congressman Glenn Ivey's social media and on his website. I have my own recollections about him. I interviewed somebody running against him as well because we need to knock these incumbents out that are not meeting the current moments. And it's very obvious they're not meeting the moment. But whenever it comes to LGBTQ rights, the Equality Act is something that obviously I would love to see as a queer person myself. My co-founders are LGBTQ, and this is practically my entire team is LGBTQ. We are all across the spectrum. The rainbow alphabet is like it literally is. Um, but whenever it comes to LGBTQ rights, what are some of those protections you would like to see in regards to the LGBTQ plus community?
So there's been a lot of discrimination in like the hiring process, like trans people not being able to get jobs, or like even like noticeably like getting paid less than their coworkers of the same position. So having amendments, like the Equal Rights Amendment, of course, as you mentioned, and making sure that we have fairness. Radical topic, right? Making sure that there's an employment measure to guarantee that fairness and punish and hold accountable corporations, businesses, institutions that are not applying these fair regulations, of course. And like voting rights, like I don't know if you know, like the Save America Act, of course. Yeah, they're not just targeting women who change their last name after being married, of course. It's trans people. So, and it's deliberate, very deliberate. So the LGBTQ, plus community, they don't make up a majority of the nation by any means. How many legislators are in power that are openly, out in the community, but they act like, oh yeah, these people are like, drains on the society. It's a completely absurd. Indiana's own Mike Pence, vice president, he was our governor right before he was vice president, and he wanted to have legislation to where like a cake, like it was a lawsuit where a bakery can deny any gay person. That was here in Indiana. That all came from here in Indiana and it went up to the national level. And so we're no strangers of bigotry around here. And it's our job to stand up for them. And as a congressperson, I'm here to listen to the community and listen to what measures we can do best to fight for the community unapologetically. Like, there's some politicians, mainstream line. I might throw Gavin Newsom under the bus here for bringing on far right conservatives such as like Charlie Kirk and saying, you guys maybe have a point on on the trans thing. I think is what he said, throwing trans people under the bus. I'm proud to say I'm never gonna like even if it like let's say hypothetically it would drop me down like a couple points. I will never throw the community under the ever by any means. You know, as the famous poem goes, first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I'm not a communist. Then they came for the the socialists, and then the trade unionists, and then the Jews, all these groups, and it's not just that. It's not like, oh yeah, well then they'll come for me. It's just basic human empathy. Have a shared understanding and like experience of the universe with your friends. These are human beings, obviously. So just treat them with the respect and dignity that they deserve. And I'll be here listening the entire time to make sure that the community's voice is in Congress once elected.
And even some of the openly LGBTQ representatives, they still do not pay attention to the needs of the community. And there's a couple that I'm thinking off the top of my head, and one of them is my current incumbent in my congressional district, which she broke Kansas history by becoming the very first openly LGBTQ Native American woman elected to Congress, Representative Sharice Davids in the Kansas Congressional District 3. However, she has not listened, and she, instead of being out and talking to her constituents, she is taking pictures with a local police department. I don't know how much more tone deaf it can get than that. I do not know how much more it can take, but happy to say that I just interviewed the person that is challenging her from the left. Her name is Sarah Prue. She's running a Kansas Congressional District 3 for the Democratic primary, and she's a badass human being. Shameless plug. Just had to add that in there. Let's go directly into, environment. And there's a lot that goes into this. And we've been seeing some very wicked storms across the Midwest. Just last night, 4/23, 2026, I believe it's either F3 or F4 tornado ripped through a rural area of Oklahoma. And here in the Kansas City, Kansas area where I am based, which right now I'm like a little bit away from that, I'm at my mom's, but luckily we just had, really bad hail, really bad rain, but there wasn't a lot of like tornadic activity. It went south of us. But thinking about the environment, what contributes to that, the Green New Deal will address a lot of these issues. And I know AOC is a big supporter of Green New Deal. Um, Thinking about the environment, what do you propose as far as tackling like climate change? And also, because it's not too late. We only have one planet. We got to take care of it. And shamelessly, I have not protected the planet myself. I can obviously do better. All of us can. But what do you propose as far as the Green New Deal and then also just addressing, the actions of climate change? Because it's very real, no matter
Yeah.
what they try to say.
So the individual actions of us individuals, that is, it was the fossil fuel industry that
Yes.
made up the language, the carbon footprint, your
Yes.
individual carbon footprint. Like, are you using
Yes.
recyclables? Are you using plastic straws or paper straws? Which I'm not saying go out there and just like, oh, well, it's a systemic issue. Go out and do everything you ever want because, hey, it's whatever, negligible. No, but by and large, individual responsibility is a fossil fuel propaganda tool because they want to put the burden on you to do better. Even though I want to say it's like 70% of no wait, it's like 90% of carbon emissions are emitted by like the top 20 or something like please fact check. I'm pulling like deep cut memory here on these statistics, but it overwhelming majority, I will say, of the carbon emissions are made up by like 20 companies. Notably, the American military is one of the largest polluters anywhere in the world. But something we have to realize is that the planet, our ecosystems, are not simply just dying. They're being murdered by the big fossil fuel industry. And the people who are murdering our planet, our ecosystems, they're real people. Like they're out there. They're out there in the world. You'll pass them on the street. They work in big industry like big buildings and all like all that. So we can put pressure on these people. And we must put pressure. We only got one planet, as you say. So yes, I'm in favor alongside AOC for the Green New Deal. And it's just such common sense. The Green New Deal is nothing radical as much as the right wing will try to say, or even people in the our own party, the Democratic Party. It is just a starting point. It is like a recognition of the problem, is largely what the Green New Deal is. And I think that we should have strong carbon tax, a strong carbon tax to basically like, you know, if you're going to pollute the planet, all right, all this money is going into replacing your business model. We're going to have a completely green, renewable energy system and save the planet. And that's the only way forward. You know, I want my grandkids someday to know what winter is like. Not nuclear winter on that, but we need to make sure that we're taking care of our planet and making sure that I'm calling for the completely national eventually we need to completely nationalize the fossil fuel industry. They're too dangerous to be kept alive. So, are we going to get that in a Trump administration and we just barely take back Congress? No. All right. We need to definitely take back the presidency, perhaps the Supreme Court, like all these things, and it's a long-term goal, but we can't get it soon enough. These people will kill the entire planet all for profit and greed. These people are greed addicts. But unlike drug addicts who harm themselves and those around them, these greed addicts are harming the entire planet. All nearly 8 billion people, all wildlife, the plants, the fauna, the creatures in the sea and the oceans, they're going to kill us all, basically. All for what? Their 50th yacht and to lobby some politicians to keep this system going the way that it is. And it's as we mentioned earlier, the system is not broken. It's working exactly as intended. It's not broken, it's rigged against us working class people. It's up to us to organize and fight back against that.
100%. Which kind of leads into like the next thing is like veterans. And we collaborate a lot with Dylan Blaha out of Illinois. One of my biggest inspirations, one of my biggest, heroes of this present moment. He stood up at a
Good friend of mine.
time
Yeah.
where we all need to stand up and unite behind people like Dylan. Remember your oath. Remember your oath and reject illegal orders. You have the right to do so. You're in active duty, you're in reserve, you have the right to reject these illegal orders. Remember your oath.
Yeah. He just
And
got arrested, by the way.
I know I
Yeah.
saw
Mhm.
and Demi
Yeah.
and Demi Palachek, who just won her Democratic primary, for Illinois House of Representatives. And I think of I think of the stories that my grandfather used to tell me of his military service. I didn't get into as much as I wanted to with him. He passed away before I had like that really deep like conversation with him. I wanted to know more. He passed away in 2020, so 6 years ago. Um, I didn't get the chance to actually talk to him the way I wanted to. I wanted to know a lot more, and I could fiery mind still want to know. But his entire line is like gone now. Like there's nobody. There's nobody to ask. There's nobody to talk to. So I'm looking into my ancestry and I'm finding out a lot of different things. Um, just just curiously, right? But the VA is far from perfect. Like far from perfect. My grandfather actually refused to go to the VA for healthcare because he didn't like the way that he was treated. Um, he didn't like the way that they were talking to him. He saw a lot of things that he wanted to like fix. He just never had the opportunity to do so. But as far as like veterans healthcare, you know, in veterans like housing, here in Kansas City, Jason Kander is a veteran himself, and he created the tiny homes, like to get these veterans off the streets. Obviously, I want to see this like completely across the country. He's doing a really good job at like getting it going. It obviously needs to be expanded, but obviously funding is a huge thing because the Veterans Community Project is a nonprofit organization. But as far as like veterans healthcare goes and like housing, what do you propose as addressing this as well? Because this is also a public health crisis and recognizing that, our veterans put their lives on the line, and oftentimes they go in to help their families. My grandfather enlisted to help his family be able to survive, to be able to live. So, what are your thoughts about this? And given your background, I know you got a lot to say about this.
Yeah, so Victoria's Parts, to bring it back to my opposition, of course, voted yet again, get by the way, for the One Big Beautiful Bill, which cut 83,000 jobs from the VA. And there was already a deficit of I think more than 55,000 jobs at the VA. And these are therapists, psychiatrists, Yellow Ribbon Program, which is like military to civilian job transition. Uh, as someone like I wasn't, we weren't back home a year after our deployment overseas, and one of our friends died by suicide. So I can't help but imagine or think or wonder what if he would still be around if he knew of the proper programs and the proper channels and we had fully funded like therapy, like mental health care for all in this nation, but especially the people who go overseas, right? And we need to be a nation. We need to take care of those that take care of us. And we need to have mental health care for all. I am in championing that we should have TRICARE for all who serve. Regardless if they serve 3 years, if they serve 4 years, definitely if they serve 19 years, just shy of that 20-year retirement, you know what? Hey, this is before we get Medicare for all and everyone just gets health care, because it's a right, of course. But yeah, if you go overseas, like people who join the army, by and large, okay, they're just one like especially the National Guard like myself. You join because you see the ads on TV like, oh yeah, this hurricane hit the community or like a flood or a tornado. You want to be that person that's on like that, the commercial that's handing a blanket to a cold child and like rappelling out of a helicopter and like grabbing a family and taking them up. Like you want to genuinely help your community and hey, you get college out of it too. That's a lot of young people. There's a high school to prison pipeline for a lot of marginalized communities across the nation, and sometimes the only way out is through the military. Now it's deliberate. That's very we needed to fix that, of course. But like so yeah, the people in the military, like they're just well-meaning people, and then Congress sends them overseas to fight and die for another nation or for the large oil companies or just for the military industrial complex, like all these reasons, the big money interests. I believe it's as Eugene once said that the working class has never declared a war. It's always yours to fight and die, not to reason why. And we need to have a system that actually like takes care of our veterans. The PACT Act, Victoria Sparks, my opposition, by the way, she voted against the PACT Act and it passed no thanks to her by the way, but it made sure that veterans exposed to toxic burn pits and Agent Orange, both in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, it made sure that they got the health care that they needed. She didn't think that was a good idea. She disagreed with that. So if you didn't think she hated veterans enough after voting for the big beautiful bill, there you go. And we need to replace her. We need to replace every single politician who will not sit. Politicians love wrapping themselves up in the flag and then disregarding everything that we thought it meant. This current regime ignoring Supreme Court orders left and right. They are bombing civilian fishermen in the Caribbean. They are bombing schools in Iran, killing more than 180 children, girls like 7 to 12 years old. And there's so many things. Like Victoria Sparks is just a walking contradiction on herself. She's an oxymoron. Well, she's a moron too, of course. But she's a Ukrainian that doesn't support Ukraine. She's an immigrant that doesn't support other immigrants. At her town hall, she said, criminals do not deserve due process. She was just talking about the ones coming from the southern border, by the way. And she's a woman that doesn't agree with women's rights. But something that does make complete sense is that she's a millionaire that does anything in the interest of other millionaires and billionaires. Your large corporate donors, by the way. It's up to us to organize that grassroots movement and replace her. But yes, we got to take care of veterans, try care for life, expand the PACT Act, expand the VA, have mental health care for all, and take care of those that take care of us.
That's a mic drop moment. It is, and Again, it's just common sense. It's 2026 and we should not be having this conversation. It's literally common sense, Jackson. You know this as well as I do. And, thank you for being candid, talking about this. And I love how you just said, she's my opponent, by the way. Yeah, we know. And I think it's a good idea for her to lose her reelection. How about that? Because I think that you bring this energy that I think is resonating with people. Now, my last question for you, I know we're coming up on time. I wanted to keep this at an hour, short, sweet, and right to the point. Well, actually, I have two more questions, but I want to ask this one first. What are you hearing? Like, if you're out in the community, talking to voters, talking to your future constituents, what are like three of the top concerns that you are hearing as far as what they are telling you? What are you hearing from the ground as the issues that they deeply care about and that they're concerned about?
So one of the top issues, and I will say it definitely varies
Mhm.
depending on where you're at, what community
Mhm.
you're talking to. I was talking to a Latino family uh, just yesterday, and they're very concerned with ICE. And no matter where I go in the district, all six counties, they're talking about there are federal mass agents that are kidnapping our neighbors and our friends, and they're killing our community. People who even are American citizens.
The backbone.
And yeah, and of course, the current regime is trying to expand the budget of ICE. And I'm not just saying, oh, reform ICE. Oh, give them body cameras. Oh, defund them a little bit. No, I'm calling to abolish ICE. It is a racist institution, has no right of existing, and it is out of place. If this was 1945 Germany, you would not be saying, "Oh, guys, we just need to defund the Gestapo. We need to just change the letters around, rebrand the Gestapo." But we need them. There are Democrats in this primary that will just say, "Oh, we need to rebrand like ICE agents." No, they have no purpose. So ICE is one of the top issues. The war is a big issue right now. Of course, get our soldiers back home. No more wars for Israel and the Epstein class. Healthcare. Of course, I can talk about healthcare for hours, endless amount of times. People are worried about cost, but also, if I might add a secret fourth point here, people are just worried about even having, if I'm allowed to cuss here, and I'll just say effing. People are worried about having an effing of an election. Uh, this this regime is deeply fascist. There's no hiding it. It's textbook, and I'm not just saying that as like a buzzword, like how they call us commies or whatever. It's historical fascism. So it's up to us to fight back by any means necessary. It's as Fred Hampton once said. It's not a question of violence or nonviolence. It's a question of resistance to fascism or non-existence within fascism. It's our job to fight back against fascism by any means necessary.
You just said one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah.
And you just talked about one of my absolute inspirations behind my activism. That's why I'm like, if you're listening to the audio version of this, you're not going to know my reactions, but I'm like, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Fred Hampton was ahead of his time.
Yeah. He was
You
young.
know, he was so young and he was
24.
killed by the very systems he was fighting against. That's another mic drop moment because it's fascism wrapped in red, white, and blue. It seriously is. And just, oh God. Where do we go from here? We see politicians running, quote unquote progressive campaigns. Yours is truly a progressive, and as a democratic social. Ow! I stuck my elbow against the wall.
Yeah.
I'll edit this part out. Don't worry, nobody wants to hear about that. But I just hurt the hell out of my arm. But um, what was I talking about? Oh, Fred
GFA.
Hampton,
Yeah.
like I said, was murdered by the very system in which he was pushing back against and fighting against. He stood up for his community, he stood up for himself, and he said, enough is enough. And he was killed by the FBI. And he was killed by Chicago PD, like during a illegal raid. Like And we see that now. We see it. These same battles. History repeats itself. I don't know if it's going to repeat like this, but it did. And well, I mean, it kind of did. But, just thinking about, is there anything else that you wanted to share that people should know about you or know about your campaign? And then how can they contribute to your campaign, uplift the work that you were doing, and you know, what else do you want people to take away from this conversation? But it goes beyond this conversation. Like you said, you have a May 5th primary, or yeah, May 5th primary.
Mhm.
You know, what what do you want people to understand? What do you want people to know
Yeah.
about running for office? You could give a piece of advice. And I know I'm asking you a lot of things, but it's kind of like break it down. But what is some of that advice that you would give to people who are thinking about running as well? Start
Yeah.
with kind of break it down.
All right. So first off, advice for people who are wanting to get in, followed by my general thoughts of like, hey, how can you get involved?
Yes.
So step up. If you notice a vacancy, step up. That's what I like. I am literally random guy off the street, and I'm proud to say that this campaign has had a direct influence in shifting our party to the left, or mainly to the center because they started off right wing. So things that are were like taboo, like Medicare for all, are now like if you don't support Medicare for all, and this is Indiana, okay, like you should be viewed as like an extremist. So if you're thinking about getting involved, and sometimes it takes a while, like I didn't even want to run initially. Like I got called to run by my friends and family, and just do it. To get for it took me start early. I been running a year and a half, and the primary is just around the corner. So like if that helps. Like I did not know how to do anything until, you found the community, you've learned these shared experiences and just make that good. It doesn't have to be Congress or anything, or it could be, but it could be local and everyone need. And as we were talking about just before the show here, the revolution will have to take all paths. So either it's running for office, the electoral route, or if it's like civic engagement, mutual aid, education, just get involved. Like all it takes for evil to prevail is for good people not to do anything. You have to stand aside, like, oh, wait your turn, or think that some just come to the assumption, or like, oh, someone else is going to do it. Well, like, sure, it's a big world, someone will do it. No, they won't until you do. You're that somebody. Be the inspiration that you've been waiting to see. Be the movement that you've been waiting to see in your area, and be the change that you want to see in this world. So, and as far as like what I want people to take away from our campaign, from Indiana politics or just national politics generally, Indiana is not a red state. Hot take. Last midterm election, 60% of registered voters did not vote. We ranked 50th at a voter turnout. And if we increase the voter turnout, we could have won the entire thing. So we have to understand as a party and as candidates, why are people not voting in this area? It's because they feel like they know the Republicans are going to stab them in the face, but the Democrats, time and time again, have been stabbing them in the back. They'll say you're their friend. That Malcolm X once said, like, a Democratic Party is like the fox. It smiles at you, but it's still got teeth. So we have to change the party from within. We have to build a party for the working class and not the donor class. And then we're going to be, if we get voter turnout up, like we have to remind ourselves, Obama won this state in 2008. Bernie Sanders won this state in the primary in 2016. We're a working class Rust Belt state. And the only way to win in Indiana is by being a populist. You have to go to where the people are, meet them where the people are. So 20 years this state has been run but by like a supermajority of Republicans. Democrats have been kicked out of all levels of power in this state. And it's because we keep on running these corporate conservative Democrats. How can you expect your base to rally behind you if you won't even go to your base? As I mentioned before, 70% of the nation wants Medicare for all. If you don't support Medicare for all, you have no place in this party. If you support genocide, you have no place in this party. If you get corporate PAC money and you turn your back on the will of the American people, you are a traitor and you have no place in this party. So, what this campaign is trying to do, Out of all places, I'm in Muncie, in Indiana. It's one of the areas within the fifth district, 6 counties wide. Out of 9 congressional districts of Indiana, the fifth district is the most purple. It's most ready to flip. The numbers are there, and we are going to be the ones that do it this year. So the whole world's eyes are on this district this time around. We can flip this district. We can take back the House of Representatives. We can impeach Donald Trump and the rest of his war criminal administration, but we need your help. Bernie Sanders won this state in 2016, and 10 years after his victory here, a grassroots progressive will win again. And we're going to end the genocide in Gaza. We're going to fight to expand healthcare for all. We're going to get money out of politics and kick these traitors out of office. But we need your help. We can't do it alone. These people, I'm going up, even in this primary, I might say. Victoria Sparks, we talked a lot about her, but there are pro genocide candidates in this primary as well. There are corporate candidates. There are people who don't believe in Medicare for all, like you and I. I need your help. And I need you to go to jacksonfranklinforcongress.com to learn how to get involved. Go to Progressive Victory, where they're doing awesome phone banking to help our campaign. Get in contact with them, join our team, and yes, please donate to this grassroots campaign. We just have a little under 2 weeks left in this primary, and we need all the help that we can get to replace the fascist, kick them out of office, and put a grassroots progressive in. I'm proud to say that I stand with working class people. I'm proud to say that I'm endorsed by the DSA. Because unlike some people, I don't just show up to a picket line one day and take money from their bosses the next. If you want someone who is unapologetically fighting for the working class and not the donor class, then help support our campaign. And if you live in the 5th District, please vote for Jackson Franklin so we can actually replace Victoria Sparks and actually hold these people accountable and create a future that we all know we deserve and that we believe in. And together, we'll create a system that places people over profits. It's hard to talk about. Yeah, what if, all right, anyway.
I'm emotional because it's like, oh my God. It's not very often that I place trust in politicians. It's not. But I know that your district would benefit from you being in Congress because, like you said, Fred Hampton, he would be incredibly proud of your platform, by the way. I can hear him in my head. He'd probably be out there door knocking with you. I can feel it.
You probably.
You're his style of candidate,
Mhm.
but it comes from the heart and it comes from within. You're a genuine person. You bring this energy that I think just motivates people. I've seen videos of you speaking, and it's like this is the energy we ought to be bringing. And it's not just Pisces. It's just it's the working class. It's the people that are the backbone and the foundation of this country. It was built off of us, right?
Yeah.
And we are what makes America great, not those billionaires, not Elon Musk, not Donald Trump, not Victoria Sparks. As we've said her name a couple times in this
A couple times.
episode, and I'm going to say it again. Victoria Sparks does not belong in Congress. She does not represent the people. She represents APAC. She represents the genocide. She represents. Oh,
She's so pro-life and so pro-child. She'll send your taxpayer money to go bomb children overseas. And to your point of like working class people standing up, it's as John Lewis once said, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. It's up to us to organize that power. It's a grassroots movement, and it's going to take every single one of us to get this done. And it takes if you are that person to do that change. Don't wait for someone else to come around. The time is now. The time is now. The time is now. I can't say it enough. Right now is our time as a working class movement. We need to have a general strike organized May 1st and get involved. Every single level, we need to be fighting these fascists. If you're wondering what you would do during the Holocaust in the 1940s and the 1930s, look around. You're doing it. And it's never too late to be a born again progressive, as I might say, but it's never too late to get involved in your community. Fight the good fight, keep causing good trouble, and like we can get it done. I don't think the arc of the moral of the universe naturally bends towards justice. It must be forced to bend. and it's bent by blood, sweat, and tears. People die fighting to bend the things towards justice, and you got to know there's a hell of a lot of people bending it towards injustice, and that's its own thing. But you have to get involved if you want to see the change. You've seen it on your community. You walk the streets and you see the houseless person. You see the houseless vet. You know your healthcare bills are way too high. You see the dead children in Gaza. You see our soldiers going overseas for all for the sake of another nation. You see our corrupt political system that is only working for the pedophilic billionaire elite. It's up to you to join our movement and get involved. And it's, as I keep saying, the democracy is not a spectator sport. We must all get involved and create the future that we believe in.
Period. End of discussion. End of story. That's
Mhm.
again, that's another mic drop moment, and there's been quite a few of them. But again, Jackson, thank you so much for this conversation. First of all, because it's been a while in the making. But I want to say thank you for who you are, what you stand for, and fighting like hell for people that are here, fighting, and for those who are no longer here because of these systems that have told them that we don't give a damn about you. That's not true. It's not, it's false, right? But again, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing what happens. I know whatever happens in this primary, I know this is not the last of you. I already know that. You have so much fight, you have so much energy. I know whatever happens, but I got a strong suspicion I know it's going to happen. You're going to win this. I feel it. And, good luck to you, first of all. Second of
Thank you.
all, feel free to come back anytime. Feel free to collaborate on social media. We're here to amplify voices like yours because it matters to me, but not just to me. It matters to all of us. And with that, thank you. I appreciate you. Of
Thank you so much, Zachary. Thank you.
course.